Environmental Concerns and Real Property meeting for today. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting? Thank you, Supervisor McDevitt, seconded by Supervisor Hogan. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Corrections? Abstentions? Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn it right over to Lexi for our first item.
Okay. I have on here a resolution request, and this resolution request is something that is accounted for in real property tax law. And it is I'm looking to be able to designate an official, preferably the treasurer, to approve New York State real property tax law corrections of errors and/or applications for refunds. The law, real property tax laws, sections 554 and 556 allow for an official to approve correcting the tax roll and tax bill and to authorize payment of refunds less than $2,500. This would help the process along. In December of 2017, they changed the application, and on there is a section 3 that really needs to be signed off on. Normally, they kind of get run through at a later point through the board, and we get a resolution approval that way. Just makes it easier to have that designation on there before, so that it can go right to the town clerk or the town tax collector to be able to move that forward, get people's payments in a timely fashion. So it would really just help big time with time and cost savings.
Supervisor Dickinson, moving that. Thank you. Seconded by Supervisor Simpson. Any questions? Yes, Supervisor Molino.
That's 2,500. Is that total for
Each individual one, it would have to be $2,500 or less.
Okay, all those in favor, please. Supervisor Hogan, do you have a question?
The designating official would be the treasurer. Thank you. It's in the little red line put together on the second page. Yes, I did know that. Thank you.
Okay, all the Supervisor McDevitt, do you have a question?
I just a quick question, and it's more specifically to the Queensbury side on Bay Road. In terms of...
Not there yet. We're not there yet.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
We will be.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Let me get this passed, yeah? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, carries.
Okay, next on the agenda is some review of Queensbury parcel 308.8-1-56. I've spoken with you at a past 2, maybe 3 committee meetings. We talked about this a couple of different times. This is a piece of property that was up to go to our tax foreclosure this past year and be sold. We decided to pull it and talk with National Grid because all of their pole right-of-ways go through there. So I have been in touch with them on several occasions, and we're still waiting on them. I reached out to Jane Catalano, is the last lady I've been dealing with, and she says there's an environmental review is pending. So I just wanted to pass that information on to you, just so that you had that. And next on the agenda is updates on our Chestertown, 10 Pine Street, and our Bay Road property, 275, which is the Mullins site. We had our reviews done. I do have copies here. If anybody would like one, I did pass them on to Supervisor Strow and Supervisor Leggett, so they each had them because the properties were in their town. But if anybody else would like to review them, I do have copies, or I can send you electronic copies if you would like to review them. DEC, everything was sent to DEC, and I did get letters back from them. I can try to quickly read over them to you. They're pretty short. The one on 10 Pine Street, New York State Environmental Conservation, the department has reviewed the environmental subsurface report for the above referenced site. There were no contaminants of concern in the environmental samples that were identified to be above guidance standards. However, the department recommends the removal and proper disposal of the drums and underground storage tanks if present. which in the report, it shows two. I was there when they were doing all the testing. There's one right on 10 Pine Street and then one on the northwest end of the lot. They did find one there as well. Based on the investigation, issues with the suspected underground storage tanks are not expected. Nonetheless, if contaminated soil is identified during the excavation and removal of the suspected underground storage tanks, please call the spill reporting hotline. I did also speak to Russell Hike, who is out of the Raybrook DEC. I believe that's because we're Region 5. So he agrees with everything that was in this letter. Both of these letters were signed off by a Nicole Hins. But I spoke to Russ about working with DEC again like we did on the Johnsburg property where there was tanks in the ground, with a possible agreement to get the tanks removed from the ground on the Chestertown property. He asked if there was a timeline, and I said that we'd be willing to work with them. So he mentioned he could check with Albany, but it would be in the springtime. It's not really anything they can do right now anyways with the weather the way it is. I said that I would give him a call back at the end of February because he asked for a reminder, and then he would proceed with that one, reaching out to them to see if we could get DEC on the property like we did the Johnsburg one to help us with the tank removal.
So you'll reach out to them, and if we are able to come to an agreement, you'll bring that back to committee before we enter the agreement. Yep. Okay.
Then Bay Road. The Bay Road one, I'm still a little iffy on. I'll go over the letter. The department has reviewed the ATL reports and the Clark Patterson Lee Limited Phase 2 site assessment for the Queensbury property. Both investigations identified the presence of low-level volatile and semi-volatile organic compounds in subsurface soil and groundwater in several areas of the site. However, the only contaminant of concern that exceeded applicable standards was 1,2,4-trimethylbenzene in both soil and groundwater. Based upon the information obtained to date, no further investigation or remediation is required. It is anticipated that contaminated soil could be encountered during future redevelopment of the site. In the event that the contaminated soil is removed during redevelopment, they were putting in sewer lines, water lines, foundation, the removed material will need to be properly disposed. If contaminated soil is encountered, you got to call the hotline again. I spoke to Russ on this one after this letter because it still to me seemed like there was concerns that if somebody goes in to do something, they're going to find contaminated soil. Russ did agree with the letter that we received, and he says, yes, there is contamination, but at this time there's no action is needed. He feels that if we were to present our data that we have from our reports and our studies to a developer, that they would be fine with it. He feels that currently the building is the biggest issue with the property. And based upon the information obtained to date, no further investigation or remediation is required, but they also anticipate contaminated soil. So, I don't know, my personal recommendation would really, it should be a concern still to the county to get in the chain of title, unless we really want to look into maybe the cost of the actual cleanup of the property. Because I think what's going to happen is if somebody else gets it, they're going to have to do cleanup, and then they're liable to come back on the county anyways. So I don't know, maybe Supervisor Strell has a little input since it's in his town. Supervisor Strell?
Well, I came across the same concerns that you did reading the report, is that it wasn't definitive.
No.
You said, yes, you have contaminated soils, and, you know, if you develop it, you are going to have to dispose of it properly. Well, that doesn't leave you with a good feeling.
No, that's it.
So, I'm surprised that Clark Patterson didn't suggest in their assessment some kind of suggested remedial action.
After we had the Clark Patterson report done, we had spoke with Russ Hike at that time. I think Mike was involved with me talking to him. And his recommendation was to have the groundwater samples done. And so that's why we went forward and had the groundwater samples done. So now he has everything, and in this letter, it's almost like they're, signing off, but they're not, because if you go onto DEC's website, there is the spill report from when they went in and did the water testing. So DEC's not really signing off on this. Some type of remediation needs to be done. The only way we're going to be involved is if we take title to it. We have chosen not to take title up to this point. I don't believe that we can go on the property because we only have temporary incidents of ownership, and that is really just to do studies and inspections. We can't go on and do cleanup. DEC in the Johnsburg case was able to because they're DEC and they have the authority to enter onto properties. We don't have that authority, so the only way that we could do it is if we took title to it.
Supervisor Dickinson?
Lexi, what's the value of this property?
I don't know. I think they probably owe more in taxes than they do in
Tax liability
what they.
well over
Huge,
200,000.
Yeah.
So, just off the cuff, the building has no value. Actually, it's a detriment because it needs to come down.
It is.
So you got a negative value on the property. Is that brick building?
Just south of Bard.
Yeah, that's a market, wherever that's called.
Supervisor McDevitt?
So it has little value.
Huh?
So it has very little value.
Very little.
No value.
It would be negative because somebody would have to really put a lot of money in to clean it up. The building has to come down, it really does. It's unsafe. There's kids in and out of the building, there's graffiti everywhere. Myself and Treasurer Swan walked through it the day they were over there doing the wells, and it's just a disaster inside. I mean, there's paint cans strewn everywhere, there's paint everywhere, there's leftover little bits of everything laying inside. The roof is in very poor condition, everything leaks. It's a very unsafe structure. I know I had talked to Dave Hatton about this, but I asked him to wait until we got reports back before we move forward, because I think that the town really is looking at condemning the property. So...
That'd be my suggestion. John take care of it.
Supervisor McDevitt, and then
No,
I'll go.
I guess the question that I'm posing is, first of all, I think we've come a long way to get to this point where we actually can look at information that has some scientific basis to it, okay? I go by this piece of property almost on a daily basis. It is an eyesore. It is an accident waiting to happen. It is, but what happens in situations like this where we get to this point, okay? Now we're almost kind of getting fixated into concrete again, where we wait another 20 years before we do anything, okay? So I guess what I'm looking for is maybe a mechanism to try to solve the problem, and I guess the mechanism is money, I guess, at the end of the day. But the structure's got to go. The site, if there is any additional remediation, has to be taken care of. But to just go to this point and then get kind of fixated on kind of like, gee, we don't think we have a solution because it could be expensive, okay?
Supervisor Garrity?
Yeah, my thing is, if we claim to be the stewards of the environment, why don't we apply for some brownfield money to see if we couldn't get some brownfield money to clean up this place? And what is that name of that chemical? What is it? Somebody tell me what it is.
Is it a gas? It's a gas-based.
Huh?
It's gas-based, so petroleum-based.
So it's like the fuel or the cleaner. I mean,
MTBE.
we did it in our community. There was brownfield money. We cleaned up 2 environmental places, and we put both of them back on. We're
I propose we put Kevin on a committee to do that.
I think
Great idea.
before maybe we go down that road, I think I might try to reach out to that attorney that I dealt with from Albany before, who got us in to do the cleanup on Johnsburg. His name is Ben Conlon. He's pretty high up with DEC in Albany. I might try to reach out to him and see if it's anything that the state would be willing to work with us on. The other stuff that I only dealt with Russ, who was local, but I had found Ben Conlon back when we were doing the Johnsburg stuff, and it worked out for us. So I don't know, I could maybe put it out to him, or he has an assistant, Deborah Gorman, who is another attorney with DEC that I could reach out to just to see if there's anything that they could do before we step into it.
Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, I walked by that building probably 5 days a week. There are homeless people living in the building at times, not every day. There's a little spot where they go in, they have a board they pull up, okay? That concerns me, because if something happens to them in that building, there's some significant liability either to the town of Queensbury or Warren County.
No, the Mullins still owns the property.
Not entitled to that property.
Okay, so if we take the title, now we become the put ourselves in the liability.
That's why we are not taking title.
Yeah,
Okay, so, I'm sorry.
okay, so I just...
Don't want to interrupt you, Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you. So I just want to make that point, though, that there's a significant concern from a humanity standpoint in someone getting hurt in that building, because it is falling down.
Supervisor McDevitt?
Just one last observation. Maybe the fact that it is directly on the bike trail would maybe there's more funding possibly out there because it does fit basically right on the bike trail. So it
Yeah.
just another thought.
Yeah. Chairman Conover?
Yeah, I mean, if doing nothing is not an option, then now the question becomes for Peter and Kevin's line of questioning. Now we need to hear from staff as to the best way to do it.
Okay.
Concert with the town, but we need to have a plan coming back. Do we take it into the Brownfield program? Do we take it into some other kind of program? What about the bikeway? I mean, we need to hear back as to the best way to do this. If doing nothing, and I would agree, doing nothing is not an option. Obviously, we need something. Now the question is simply, what is the best course of action here for us? The one thing about the Brownfield program is that it does provide state assurances and indemnifications, if you will, going forward, if that's a primary issue. If that's not a primary issue, then perhaps some other course of action. But I think from a very technical point of view, we're going to need to hear back from staff on this. And if they need to have expert advisors on this, then we should provide them the resource to be able to get that expert advisor back to us with that plan of action.
Okay. I'm hearing that we need to come up with a plan of action. We can't do nothing. So, Lexi, you're going to talk to staff. Who is back there? Yes, Supervisor McGowan, last comment on this, please.
Well, can you say that with a little bit more enthusiasm, please?
Go.
I know, I think the city just got approved for the one on Cooper Street, was also owned by Mullen, which was also quite a detriment building for many, many years. Is there any legal, pay attention there, is there any legal, justification where, since they sold the property, that we could put some kind of, hold on the family, since they still own it, to at least step up to the plate and do something to help?
If DEC gets involved, like in the Johnsburg case, what they do is they end up leaning on the owner to try to collect some of the money back. I know that's how DEC handles it, and that's what they were going to do with the Johnsburg Mosier property. I'm not sure if they have yet, but that's what the plan was.
Yes,
Okay.
I don't know if Cooper Street has closed yet or not. I know that the project has been approved for, a multi-use building.
That's a good idea, Supervisor McGowan. We will pursue all avenues available to us. I'm going to let Supervisor Merlino say something since he hasn't chimed in on this.
This might be after the fact. Why aren't county or we doing something to the property owners, going after them to clean it and fix it.
I don't think it would be us, I think it would be the town of Queensbury that would supersede on that.
Where's the town of Queensbury in this?
Well, I think Lexi said that Dave Hatton is on the verge of condemning it.
I believe that's what he had
That would
said.
probably initiate our action. But in the meantime, I heard you suggest some things that maybe we could look at, such as getting a hold of Mr. Conlon. And Mr. Conlon might suggest that this could be a DEC thing, because he seems to be, or his person that works with him seems to be knowledgeable about these things. So I'd like to hear from that. And then I'd also like to talk to Dave Hatton when I get back to the office to see, you know, where he is on this, and I can share that with him when we get back. So, you know, I think we need to scratch the ground a little bit more and see what's possible for us to do. I agree with everybody in here is that something needs to be done. I mean, if nothing else, I mean, if you could just pave it over and leave the contaminants there, and it could become a parking area for the bike trail. But I don't know. So if you'll get in touch with Mr. Conlon, I'll get in touch with Dave Hatton, and we'll see what options we have, okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you for doing your work on it.
Okay, Supervisor Loeb?
Just a quick historic perspective. This first came into the open discussion about 8 years ago when Assemblyman Steck was chairman at the time. And at that point, everybody was, as Supervisor Beatty commented, don't touch it, even for a second, then we would have liability. So we've come a long way. 8 years is a long time, but perhaps he could, since he's versed in it, he could lend some support with coming to a resolution also.
Thank you. It has been a long process, but we're making progress. Thank you, Lexi. Supervisor Simpson, would you like to introduce our guests?
Sure. We have the Adirondack Lakes Alliance here with Ed Griesmer, who is the Executive Director, and Jane Smith, who is the Associate Director. Those of us that are have worked in the invasive species area and water protection, water quality protection, work fairly closely, really closely with the Adirondack Lakes Alliance. They represent all the communities in the park that have lakes, and whether they're private or public, where there's 2,000 lakes and rivers. And every year they have a consortium where everybody gets together and we exchange ideas and we learn from each other and we keep this discussion going. So with that, I'll let Ed.
Great.
Welcome.
Come forward. Thank you. Thank you. And it's great to be here because we have the opportunity to work closely with many of our friends in Warren County who are real protectors of our waters, and we want to begin with that statement saying that, you know, over the last several years, Warren County has really been a prime mover in terms of developing programs and policies to protect our waters. Beyond just Lake George, our entire county has benefited from the programs that you've initiated, as well as the Adirondack Park. And Jane and I are both happen to be townies in the sense that Jane is from Schroon Lake, I happen to be from Chestertown, and both have served as presidents of our own lake associations, so have become well acquainted with issues that we're dealing with in the sense of aquatic invasives and now terrestrial, and our own experiences led to the sense that there are many other communities, lake communities, that benefit by coming together to share issues such as invasives, the whole invasive issues, as well as best practices in terms of how to deal with those. So this, by the way, this particular committee, and still recognize people, Ron and Dennis, who were very active, and others who were very active in an initiative that began 4 years ago in terms of developing a strategy for the Adirondack Park, a prevention program, which in your packet, by the way, you'll see some information in terms of the numbers of inspections that are now taking place within the park because of that initiative. Warren County reps were very involved in developing that plan, which led to a lot of discussion with other communities and actually came into being, and it's a program that we feel that we can be proud of, and that it is really addressing the aquatic invasive program by an inspection decontamination program built on the model that Lake George had earlier adopted, like in 2014. So what we're seeing in the park now is a result of many discussions that took place here, as well as the other discussions that took place in the county, and the leadership really that was provided by Warren County. And we make, Jane and I make a point, in fact, I know people get tired of us saying this, but we tell folks, take a look at what Warren County's doing. They've got some programs there that we think really have been so important in terms of combating this program that we'd like to see other counties adopt some of the initiatives that have taken place here. So to you folks, we say thank you, because it was your leadership, we feel, that led to the development of this Adirondack Park program in terms of dealing with aquatic invasives. And what we do know is that program is making a difference. When you look at where those now decontamination sites are located, they really surround the Adirondack Park. They're great interceptors for identifying, moving aquatic invasives from boats, and we think this is making a major difference in the Adirondack Park in terms of our efforts of protecting our waters. And so we don't need to preach to the choir here, because you've been involved with it, you provide leadership, so thank you very much. Saying that, a little bit about our organization, the Adirondack Lakes Alliance, which came into being end of 2014, and you'll see on first page of the handout, the who we are statement. Who we are, what we represent, and what we're all about. And what we're all about, really, is protecting our waters. We're about clean water, and we represent lake and river associations throughout the Adirondack Park who are playing a major role in terms of helping to keep our lakes clean. And for those of you who live on, who are part of a lake community, you know the importance of those organizations to your town, as well as to the lake, as far as helping to promote the concept of clean water. So we're a 501c3 project. Strictly the uniqueness of who we are is we're all volunteers. We have no paid staff members. And really, if you look at the page 2 here of the handout, you'll see that we have regional directors throughout the Adirondack Park who are all professionals who volunteer their time to work with lake associations within their immediate area. They're all highly trained. They all bring to the table their own professional experiences, and are a great resource to the lake communities within that particular region. So we're very happy that we have them. Our program is a partnership program. We're built on, actually page 2 here, the partners that we're involved with. Our emphasis really is bringing resources to lake communities. How do you monitor your lake? What are the resources available to you? What is the science showing that will be helpful to you as you develop a lake management plan? All of those are part of the efforts of this organization, but it's really the key are the lakes and rivers themselves, and they're all part of, and they bought into every mission statement that they present is we're here to protect our water, and that's really the same mission statement of ALA. That's what we're about. So over the last couple of years, we've strengthened our partnerships with organizations listed here. And what we found is that all of these organizations are really eager to reach out to lake communities and assist them in the work that we're doing. So it's a partnership program. It's bringing resources to lakes and rivers, and it's then using the concerns of our lake associations and making them available to agencies within the state that need to hear about the concerns and about policies and programs. So that's a little bit about who we are. We have regional meetings that are topical in nature, which address specific concerns, whether it's terrestrial or aquatic invasives. We meet with lake associations throughout the year, as Matt indicated, and we do have a symposium each year, which has grown in size. I'm sure some of you have attended those, and have become a very useful way of meeting with lake associations, town supervisors, elected officials, other elected officials, in terms of addressing issues that are important to the Adirondack Park. When we say we represent lake and river associations, we represent all lake and river associations. There is a membership fee, but that does not really exclude them from being a member. So every lake, every waterfront body, or every water body in Adirondack Park is available to be a part of our association. So saying that, some of the concerns that we're dealing with, our lakes and rivers are dealing with, you would know them because of your work with particularly lakes in Warren County. Aquatic invasives, critically important. Now the terrestrial invasive issue, particularly as we look at the hemlock woolly adelgid issue, and as we know in our area, the hemlocks are so important to our lakes and rivers, and we have just now initiated a program with Cornell now, Mark Whitmore, who flew with Manton DC. They become the main players in terms of addressing this issue, providing leadership as far as what can be done. And we are working on an initiative with them now that our lakes and rivers would be involved with as far as identifying hemlocks in their immediate areas and making that information known to them so that this project at Cornell can address that particular issue. And there have been a number of meetings here that I know most of you have been involved with in dealing with that particular issue. But that's an important one. Storm runoff, major concern for our lakes and rivers and the pollution of our waters. But more recently, what has come into being is a discussion, and John, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this, because the Queensberry law, septic law, is one that has, even though that law was just passed, has been picked up by a lot of our folks saying, we need to take a look at this. We need to address this issue. And when you take a look, and I'm sure as you work with it, not a whole lot of information out where there are laws that have been passed. The Queensberry law was almost unique. Inlet has a program, but there are very few places that have addressed that particular issue. And so we applaud Queensberry for that, and we think that will become a model, could become a model, as the Lake George Association just put out in their information, to other municipalities, lakefront municipalities within the county. But also, we think that could well be and I guess we'd like to sort of throw it back here to the committee to even take a look at the possibility of this becoming a county-wide program. I know there's been a lot of discussion with many of our municipalities, but you've created a law here that we think could be appropriate to any lake. And I think this is one that, we would recommend that, at least for this committee, Environmental Concerns Committee, take a look and see if there are possibilities for a county-wide effort in this area that we think would be helpful to all of our municipalities. So, we're concerned about it. We know that many of our communities are concerned about it, and the number of septics that are in existence within the county, if we just ask Soil and Water to give us a list of septic parcels, property where there are septic systems. I mean, there are a lot of septic systems out there. And whether or not they're being regulated, how they're being regulated, but I think all of us should be taking a look at, so.
That's a very good issue.
Excuse me?
Yes, it's a great issue, and I don't mean to cut you off, but we are short on time, and I want to leave a little bit of time for questions, because I saw Supervisor Dickinson raise his hand a while ago.
Great.
Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine. And
Thank you.
That's the point that we're at.
Ed, I'd like to thank you for coming, and I appreciate the comments for the supervisor's support, but I really want to emphasize that you guys are the ones that are carrying the water. All the lake and river associations that are volunteer people in this day and age to have successful volunteer programs is really a merit. You've done a great job with it, and we really appreciate your work and your effort. Lastly, Lake George has a sewer initiative program to upgrade on-site septics around the lake. The program applies to all the properties between the shore and Route 9N, and properties up to 3 major double-lane streets. It's over 500 parcels. But the program is unique because it's voluntary, and we have a waiting list right now. We are getting ready to fire this program up after 5 years this spring. And we have a waiting list of people that want to participate. And basically what the program does is if you voluntarily want to upgrade your septic system from whatever it is to something modern, it's a 50-50 match program. If your septic system costs $12,000, you can get $6,000. It would allow you to then upgrade your septic system to one of the more modern tertiary treatments. And there are several of them out there, and it's really ideal for properties that are on water mountains.
Okay, great. Yeah.
But finally, thank you guys for all your time and effort, Jane as well. We really do appreciate it. It's great to have fun.
Supervisor McDevitt?
Again, thank you, Ed and Jane. Appreciate your efforts. I live in Glens Falls. I'm not aware that any of my constituents live on Lake George, or Spring Lake, or Glen Lake, or any of the beautiful lakes in the Adirondacks. I would readily and immediately support countywide law, to hopefully ensure that our lakes are kept clean. But again, I don't live in Grant Lake with constituents that maybe have some reluctance. So does this become a political question to some extent? Is there a reluctance on the part of people that live around Lake George, or people that they would say, gee, I'm is it a stupid question? It probably is. Yeah. So there probably is a modicum of reluctance. So, but I put my hand up in a minute to support it. But I'm just talking practically now.
Exactly.
I don't have to take the heat. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Jane, did you?
I would just like to kind of address that, and we, because it's natural for us to talk about lakes, but I think this is a problem with watersheds, and we all live in a watershed, and what the watersheds are is every community, and it ends up in the lakes and the rivers, but there's streams and everything above that, so it's kind of last result you see in there. But we are talking about the entire watershed, and I know Warren County is in the Upper Hudson watershed and the Champlain Basin watershed. So, it's not really just about the lakes, but it's everything that above and comes down to that.
Yeah. And I want to echo what Supervisor Dickinson said. Thank you very much for all the work that you do, and for coming today, too. Supervisor Stroud, did you want to chime in?
I just want to make one point that I see in your description of who you are, your emphasis of management plans. That is something that DEC is starting to emphasize more and more. Is DEC is willing to help you with this, but we need a management plan. As a matter of fact, there's grants available for management plans. So those lakes that don't have management plans, they need to develop those, and I mention that because Glen Lake is one of those that needs to develop this management plan. So I saw that into who we are, and I thought that was bravo.
Yes, Supervisor Molino.
And just as you, thank you for comments. I just got involved Friday of trying to get some grant money from Milfoil and found out that one of the things in the application, you have to have a management plan, so we're about looking at that. So it delays you a year or so, but I think it's important. Yeah.
And I think that there is an appetite here for us to consider a county-wide law, so we will bring that back to a future committee meeting to take a look at. Supervisor
I
Simpson.
think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's, very small communities, and rather than have 11 different septic laws and everybody go through the process, we have a demonstrated process that was successful, and we have the groundwork there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would definitely be much easier to work through.
Yeah, not everyone won't have to
Right.
reinvent the wheel. Okay,
Great, thank you very much for allowing us to be part of your job.
thank you. Thanks for coming today. Okay, we are behind, so I'm going to take a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Hogan, Supervisor Dixon, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks, guys.